Coach, thank you so very much for joining us here on the Warm Down Pool. I'm excited to talk to you about Boston College swimming and your journey through the world of the sport.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Coach or Eric, I guess whatever I can call you now these days.
Yeah, I think we need to have a little disclosure to our fans and our audience right now. This is going to be a bizarre one for me because I'm used to talking with other coaches who are my friends, but this will be the first time that I get to talk to a coach who was a former athlete of mine. You were part of that initial class at the University of the Cumberlands that I inherited. I've obviously followed your career since you left UC, and I know your passion for coaching. And we talked about that while you were an undergrad here in Williamsburg. So this is cool for me. And I have had athletes who said, is it going to be bizarre if you ever have a coach or a former athlete of yours that ends up with a bigger job? And I said, no, I'm going to be very proud of it. And I didn't think it was going to happen this soon, but congratulations on your first year in Boston.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a blur. It's gone by really fast, but really had a great year and had a lot of fun. So I'm really excited to kind of talk about that and the process since I graduated not that long ago, I guess now.
Yeah, I had to look that up. I'm like, 2015, good night. And I remember you and I talked, and my oldest son is obviously going to school in Boston. And just like everybody that you went to school with during your time, when they find out that the little kid that ran around on the pool deck on Saturday mornings is now it's going to be a senior in college, they're like, Coach, we're not that old. And I go, how do you think I feel?
Yeah, well, the kid that I taught lessons to.
Yes. And actually, there's a couple of them that I know that you had for lessons. One of them is going to be a freshman at Cumberlands this fall. Man. So, yes, Adam is going to be there. So,
no kidding.
Yes, I found that out from admissions not too long ago. So that's a little on the surreal side, and seeing you guys, especially from that very first class and what we were trying to build at Cumberlands and how you guys helped that along. Obviously, you, Melissa, Charlotte, Kyle, and just instilling that with all the freshmen who were there that year, like Mike Monday. I still talk about the jammers with the drag suit and how you were not going to allow that, as well as Brittany Litke and Jessica Pope and that crew, and how much fun it was during that time and to see the legacy that has been built at Cumberlands. But we're here to talk about the legacy you are forging at Boston College now. I think we can reminisce about life in the Berg until we're blue in the face. But
yeah,
I want to talk about what was some of the things that when you got this position, and it was very quick. I remember it came as a shock to me, and I was very excited for you as well because you'd just come from Notre Dame and they were going through their transitions. When you sat down in the big chair for the first time as a head coach, what were some of the things that were going through your mind on day one?
Yeah, well, when I finally got to Boston, it was maybe 4 or 5 days before class started. So I got hired. I was out in California, so I had to make the trip across the country, made my way here. So I had plenty of time to think while I was in the car, and I was making audio notes to myself about things that I wanted to accomplish or things that needed to get done, and just kind of a list of procedural issues and just things that, on an administrative level that we needed to take care of before we could even think about the swimming piece. So the swimming was kind of secondary to being able to get set up. I had to meet all the athletes. I had to make sure, we were getting all of our gear set. The schedule was set. There were so many things that weren't quite in place that I really didn't have a whole lot of time to sit back and even appreciate that I had an opportunity in front of me. It was like, well, I got to get to work. We got a lot to do and the season's about to start. So I've actually had more time to reflect on that since the season has concluded, the NCAA season. And it's just been a really awesome opportunity. These last couple of months, we've had our banquet, we've celebrated our seniors. And so the kind of the initial couple of months of my time here has been a lot more in reflection since. The big thing that I really kind of took charge on going through was the first thing is I got to take care of the people here, and then I can take care of the swimming. So we had a bunch of individual meetings with the athletes just for me to honestly get to know their name, what events they swim, why do they love swimming, what's their favorite part about being a part of this team, why do they like being a part of Boston College? So those were the initial conversations that I had. And I had those with every athlete. I think it ended up being something like 30 plus hours of meetings to start off my time. And I wouldn't have had it any other way. It was so worth it to put the time in to get to know each and every athlete. We ended up going to a meet a month into my time. So first week of October was our fall break. And I'd finally gotten everyone's name down. by the time we had that first meet. And like, thank God, we're on the blocks and like, who's this, who's that? And it's, as it's faces in a desk or by your desk in a chair, and then there's people with caps and goggles on, and kind of putting those faces and names together, and the information that I gathered from our meetings to kind of get to know what kind of swimmer they were, what kind of person they were. That was my priority. And it did take some time, but it was certainly a really fun and enjoyable part of my time here, because I think everybody was just really open to learning, and the change was energizing for myself, for the team, as it is in most situations. And so we were just kind of riding a little bit of a high that first month of some of the differences in the program and in my new environment. And I think that really led to a lot of the early excitement that we had in the season.
That's great, Coach. I know when I took over here at Cumberlands, it was a bit of a fever dream, and I had a lot more time. I had been hired pretty much right after graduation in the spring, and I had a couple months, even though I didn't start till July 1, I had a couple months to start planning things out and start communicating with you guys. And I think that made things a little bit easier for me, but obviously those individual meetings that I had, and obviously you had with your athletes, putting a face with the name, because over the summer it was either an email or it was a text message. I didn't have a name with it. I think the only time I knew what people kind of looked like is that the incoming class, the freshmen, there had been an article and all of your pictures were up there. So I at least had something to go off of for that. And then you look at a bio picture on a website, you really can't. Seeing people in person kind of gives a different feel. So those meetings are critical. With those individual meetings, what were some things that really stood out to you on a positive side that the athletes, either they were looking for something from a coaching standpoint, they were looking for something for a culture standpoint? What are some things that you took from those meetings and were like, okay, I think I know where I need to go with this program, that really stood out to you?
Well, we're in a unique situation. We're in one of the best conferences in the country, and we have no scholarships. So there's perspective.
You got to love it.
Yeah. And you can certainly look at it as something that's holding you back, but we kind of just really dissipated that whole premise. Like, we're here to coach swimming and get our athletes and our team to be the best they can be. And that doesn't matter if we're scholarshipped or not, we're conference winner or not. We're certainly going to judge our success a little bit differently than trying to win, but it doesn't in any way really impact the energy and effort that our staff and the athletes in the pool brought to practice each day or brought to competition. So that being said, it was one of those things where it was a mixture of different abilities and a mixture of different personalities and a mixture of different desires in the sport. And I think the overarching theme was people really wanted to enjoy being in the pool. They wanted to enjoy being a part of this team. They wanted to enjoy competing. They wanted to really either find their love with the sport that might have kind of drifted away, or just continue in the process of really enjoying the opportunity to swim, compete at this level. And so that was something that I took, and it's something that I really I think made a priority this year. Is we're going to get the work in, right? And we're not just going to sit around and try to make everybody happy every single day, but making sure that the environment we provided for our athletes and our staff was an exciting one, a positive one, and one where everyone could see improvement consistently. Everyone could kind of see their growth, and everyone knew that they were in a place where they could have conversations with our staff and comfortably, and talk about, what was going on, what struggles they had, how could it be better in this area? What are your thoughts on this? And so it was a very open dialogue between our staff and our team, and that, I think, was the biggest thing that they really wanted from athletes that had been here before, as well as athletes that were coming in the door for the first time as freshmen. So we made that a big priority, and my door is always open. And Brian, our assistant coach, is the same way. We get on deck, and we just make sure the environment is right for us to be able to put that work in, for people to want to put that work in. People can just walk off deck at any point. We're a non-scholarship team. You can leave. It's not like you're here because you have to, because you're getting your school paid for. So people are here because they really enjoy being a part of this team. They really enjoy the environment. And so it was important for us to create a culture and create something that was really special that people wanted to be a part of.
I think that's the big word that I keep hearing from coaches, both with the podcast and talking on a pool deck, is the student athlete experience. Administrators will pound that into your head. I don't care if you're at an NAIA school in Eastern Kentucky, you're at Stanford University, or you're at Boston College, it doesn't matter. I think student athlete experience, especially right now, from the 2 years we lost in the pandemic, these kids are looking for a connection. And I know I've said it on other shows. I'll keep saying it. I struggled with that. And you have a unique perspective, is that you saw me at my best and you've seen me at my worst. We can talk about the Halloween party all day and all night, but at the end of the day, that was not one of my finer moments, although I do think you enjoyed that more than anybody. But I also think that, like you said, these kids want to be challenged. They want to be pushed. They're not afraid to work, but there has to be purpose and they have to enjoy it. You have to challenge them with something that is not going to be monotonous. And I mean, you saw me evolve my training with you guys. First year was mostly ground and pound, beat 'em up yardage. How did that play out at the end of the season? Probably not as well as it should have. We made more of an evolution, made our practices more of a purpose-driven, quality above quantity, and I'm still evolving that, especially now that I got a whole lot more toys to play with. I got power racks, power towers. You guys missed all that, and I feel bad. And every class that graduates says the same thing. They're
we had buckets.
Yes. Those are gone. Now they're parachutes. I had too many injuries with people running up the back of those buckets and hurting their hands. Haven't had any concussions in the water. I have had a couple out of the water, but it's been one of those things where we've been able to evolve the training, but at the same time, there's other aspects of coaching and of a program and a culture that need to evolve with that. And generationally, you've got to move with the times. And I'm not getting any younger for sure. So I've got to figure out those ways. And I think other coaches do as well. And that's part of the reason why we're doing shows like this and talking to coaches, is to get those ideas. I spoke with Jimmy Tierney at McHenry University not too long ago, and he said he loves talking to coaches. He could talk forever because he wants new ideas, because he knows he can incorporate things in with his culture, his training. And I think that's paramount. I'm heading to convention. By the time this airs, I will have already been there. And I know there's a lot we're talking about mental health. And that's been a key component right now, especially in college at this level. And I'm curious for you, when you were planning out your season, obviously setting up your groups, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But what were some things that when you were planning out the season, you thought, okay, we've got to incorporate team building or these kinds of exercises? What were some key points that you thought were really important to implement to establish kind of your style for Boston College?
Yeah, I think we kind of were shooting at the hip for most of the year because I didn't have time to plan a whole season right out of the gate. And, we did our best to make adjustments on the fly, but the team piece was huge. And so early on in the season, before we kind of got into the competition piece, we trained as a team. We didn't really break off at all until that last week in September, prior to going to our first dual meet. But one thing that I kind of recognized from my time at Notre Dame was the ACC is, it's now combined, but back in the day, not that long ago, prior to COVID, it used to be a split conference meet. So it was really important, I felt, to have, a women's team culture, a men's team culture, and then that combined team culture. There were three entities that needed to operate pretty, in sync throughout a year, especially when you go to a championship meet. And then when the meet combined, it certainly changed a little bit of the dynamic, but I still felt like it was really important, that we kept those three cultures and kept feeding those three cultures. When the women get on the block for a relay, it's just the women. The men aren't there. They're cheering on the side, but you've got to be able to have strength, in the group of people that you're competing with. So Brian and I were really focused on keeping those things alive. So especially when we were training as a team early on, we took the opportunity to split men and women. We got 14 lanes here, so we would split 7 and 7 to make sure that everybody was getting those opportunities to be with each other and hang with each other. The other thing that I like about that is, oftentimes when everybody's swimming together, the people that are leading the lanes end up being the men. So this allows the women to lead a lane, take charge, be a vocal person in a lane that maybe they wouldn't be. And same for the men. There might be some men who just kind of hang back, and now they got more opportunity to kind of be with the guys and really let that culture grow. And then we took opportunities to blend those together. So I think we did that pretty consistently throughout that first month. We had opportunities prior to competitions where we separated the team into separate groups for meetings to talk about an upcoming meet. Okay, what are we looking forward to this weekend? What are some of our goals as a team this weekend? All right, if we competed against this team or had a meet against this program in the past, how has that gone? What's that experience like? Let's share that with the freshmen. So we did a really good job of that in the fall. We kind of did a little bit more all together work as we went through the year. But I think those meetings are really crucial to being a really good team, men's team, women's team, combined team at our championship meet. The other piece is, early on in the year, we did this thing it was put together by the university. And we were one of the first teams on campus to take advantage of the program, but they're called community circles. And it was essentially a list of dialogue that allowed for vulnerability with every athlete in the circle. And the circles were maybe 8 to 10 people. And I participated in it with a group of athletes. And not very many of the questions really had to do much with swimming or athletics in general, but it was, let's start dialogue on what we really think team culture is. Let's start dialogue on what we really feel like a negative team culture is. If you can vocalize what a negative team culture is, you can recognize it when it's happening around you, and you can speak up for it or do whatever. So that was a really good opportunity to kind of just get people talking about it and thinking about it, instead of just letting it be what it is. And we're certainly going to continue that next year. We'll maybe make some changes to how we go through it or make it more dynamic, so it's not just the same program every year. But I think that was really important in us being able to come together as a team. And also, anytime you express any sort of vulnerability in a circle like that, it connects you. And you got athletes that really want something really, really bad. Some of these kids really want to be really, really good swimmers, and they just don't either know how to do that or what they need to do, and they want to buy in really, really hard, but they don't know if that buy-in is going to yield anything in return. So those conversations were certainly, I think, a great catalyst to how our team came together, and how we were able to form the bonds that we did throughout the season.
Absolutely. I know, just talking with my athletes this past spring, and I've always had exit meetings, but it's always kind of been an optional thing. And I'll have a handful that'll come in and they want to talk. And those are generally the ones that they already have a passion for the University of the Cumberlands, or they have a passion for the University of Nevada, or whatever program I've been a part of. But this year, I pretty much told the team, like, all of you are signing up. I need to hear from all of you, and it needs to be open up. If you want to come in and tell me I'm a jerk, come in and tell me I'm a jerk. If you think I'm doing things wrong, tell me I'm doing things wrong. If you have suggestions that maybe we can accommodate, tell me. But I really felt like this year I needed to identify where some problem areas were, but also some strengths. I wanted to know what are the things we're doing right so we can try to accent that, and then we can raise up our negatives. I always felt like I had a good pulse of what was going on in the team when you were here at Cumberlands. I think I've lost that, and it's something that it's going to help me as a coach. And I think will help every coach, because this generation is genuinely curious and they want to know. And I want to give that to them. And you know as well as anybody, I'm not the most approachable guy. You had no problem coming to my office, neither did Melissa or a few other people, but then there were others who avoided me like the plague because for fear I would take their head off. And I don't want that perception to be. I want them to feel comfortable coming in and talking with a coach, because I think that's important for student athletes and coaches, is to have that ability for dialogue. And if you can't have that, number one, you're not going to build those relationships. And number two, if people are having problems, both coaches and athletes, we're not going to clear the air, and there's going to be that lingering negativity, and it's going to create a toxic cultural environment. And I've seen it happen with programs. I've seen it happen here to an extent. And I think I need to reevaluate some things as a coach. And also I tell coaches all the time, because I'm becoming the old man in the NAIA now. They come to me for advice, and I'm doing a lot of do as I say, not as I've done, because let me be the cautionary tale on some things. So I think it's really good that you are planning these things out and you're trying to get the kids engaging and talking about, like you said, negative behavior and negative culture, and be able to identify it. Because then student athletes, more so than even you, they're going to see that outside of the pool, and they're going to address it there when you may not see it. Because I always said, I get you guys for 20 hours a week. There's a whole lot more hours in the week, and you're going to see the stuff outside the pool as athletes. So it's important, especially for our leaders, to kind of get ahead of it. And if they can handle it, that's amazing. That means you've got a great leadership core. But if you can't get ahead of it, they have to feel comfortable in coming to the coaches, so that way we as a staff can help try to right the ship. When you are looking at leaders, and obviously you came into a situation brand new, hit the ground at Mach 1 speed, it sounds like, what were some things that you were looking for from your upperclassmen in a leadership role? Because again, I'm going to hype you on this one. You were a 2-time captain for me, and you were an incredible leader here, and you did a lot of things both in the pool and out. I still credit you and that group, especially your junior year, of creating that culture in the end zone at football games. To this day, there's still pictures of that all around campus of that crew. What are some things that you looked at when you got there and said, okay, these are the people I'm going to lean on, and because they have the qualities I'm looking for? But walk me through that process of establishing kind of that leadership base.
Yeah, I think, well, the first thing we did is we took captains off the table this year.
Okay.
And it's something that I really think we're going to continue going forward, because in swimming, there's no coin toss.
Nobody needs to talk to a referee.
Yeah, no one's going over to the ref after, somebody got put in the penalty box, right? There's no captain is a title, and it honestly creates a lot more of a divide, or can, not in every situation, but it can create a divide. And it was certainly not something that I wanted to have to deal with as I'm getting to know people too. So I wasn't going to name a captain without knowing what I felt like our leadership looked like. And on top of that, I wanted everybody on this team to play some sort of role of leadership, regardless of their class. I mean, the expectation of that obviously kind of grows as you go through your time here. And it worked really, really well, because we involved all of the seniors, all the upperclassmen. We involved juniors from time to time. And, we'd say, hey, we want a rooming list put together for this meet. We'd ask one person. We'd ask a woman and a man on our staff to put together the rooming list for the men and the women. And okay, great, done. Okay, we want this done. We're going to talk to alumni. We're doing this for Support Your Sport, one of our fundraisers. Like we put them in charge of a lot of different things throughout the season and gave them a lot of responsibility, and they had to have some accountability to that. And it just felt like everybody was kind of doing it together. It didn't feel like we had people on our team that were kind of coming in front of our coaching staff and then having to relay a message and communicate the rest of the team. It certainly almost puts those people in a position where they almost feel like they have to decide, if they want to be the captain or if they want to be, part of the team. And we didn't want to put anybody in that position. And I think everybody just played that role throughout the year, and it helps kind of permeate into their time away from the pool. One thing that I really felt like was very helpful was in our team meeting discussing sort of the expectation for how I wanted this team to be perceived outside of the pool by the administration, by teachers. And the way we described that was, I want people to be envious of this group of people, that they get to be a part of this, and that the people that come out of this program are this type of person, and they have respect for people, and they have respect for leadership, and they're leaders on their own, and they're vocal, and they're exemplary, and they're great students, and they work hard as an athlete. I basically want to be able to give an honest, glowing recommendation to everybody that leaves this program. And I'm certainly not going to do it if I don't feel like they exhibit the qualities that I am looking for. But it's allowed people to really kind of blossom and grow into those leaders without essentially, you're this, and because you don't have that title, you'll never be that. And it was an awesome experience this year, having that be the case. I think we're going to continue with that going forward, because I really appreciated, what am I going to do? Name 12 captains? We got a lot of juniors that are going to be seniors next year. I'm certainly not going to do that. But I have 12 people who are really leading the charge next year on making this program even better than it was the year prior, and continuing to evolve our culture as we, have graduate some of our seniors and bring freshmen into the fold.
I really like that, Coach. I know I've kind of gone back and forth. Obviously, when in your time here, we had captains. I did away with it for a little while, mainly because I felt, I don't want to say this negatively, but I didn't feel like I had the strongest leadership at that time. I felt I needed to develop that with the student athletes a little bit more. And one of the things that we've instituted as a department here is that there's actually a leadership group where there's a representative from every single team, men's and women's, that they will meet once a month with our athletic director to talk about leadership, as well as they'll bring in various coaches to talk about their particular styles of coaching and their leadership kind of philosophy. I've had the pleasure of speaking in front of that group. Apparently I was the most requested coach. I think mainly because my personality, they knew I was going to talk. I was going to at least make it interesting. And I think I was humbled by that, because it says that I'm projecting myself not just for my program, but for the university as a whole. And like you said, I think image on campus is critical. You saw it. I've seen it at different places. If your team is at the forefront and they are the ones who are leading the charge in community service or academically or with your group, the spirit. We still watch the video of you guys charging the field after the win at against Carroll to go to the national championship for football. Those are the kind of things that you want to be known for. Unfortunately, there are programs that are, unfortunately, they have the reputation the other direction. And that's something coaching staffs need to be cognizant of and making that switch. And I think that if more coaches are aware of what their teams are doing outside of the pool and working to adjust that, you're going to create leaders down the line, and you're going to develop those freshmen and sophomores who are going to step in and be juniors and seniors, and they're going to help take your program to higher levels. You mentioned something earlier in your training that you had everybody all together at the beginning of the year. Obviously, you had your women and your men. Sometimes they mixed, etc. You've got the facility space to do that, thankfully. You knew we couldn't do that a whole lot at Cumberlands, but we still did it, especially Saturday mornings. The guys were all together, the ladies were all together. And I think that is so important when you're coaching a co-ed team, because each team has its own identity. Yes, you all come together for dual meets, and we had some exciting times, but conference championships, national championships, even if you're at a combined program, you're still a women's team and a men's team, and you've got your different battles. Talk to me about, you've gone through the first month, you're all together. How do you structure your groups, your practices going forward from that point? You know me, I had sprint, middle distance, we had the IMers, and we had stroke days, etc. How do you as a coach structure a typical week with your groups?
Yeah. It's also worth noting that we only have one full-time assistant. So in Division I, you're allowed to get 5 coaches full-time. And so we luckily have the help of a volunteer assistant who actually did swim for this program prior, Alexander Santana. And so he was a great resource for us throughout the year, actually, because he'd been a part of the program. He knew, kind of where it had been, how it had grown, what that has looked like just going throughout the season. And he knew the athletes in the water too. And so we did have 3 coaches pretty consistently on deck for most of the year. About halfway through the year, we were joined by kind of a part-time volunteer in Maria Sheridan. She swam at Duke and had an opportunity to compete, in the ACC, in Division I, and had that experience. And so she brings a lot of energy to our deck. So we really have 4 coaches that work consistently on deck at any given practice. But that's still not something where we can just assign, these people to this group, and have one coach be on that group. One of the things that I felt like was really important for myself this year, as well as I think for the athletes in the water, to get things a little bit shaken up, was to, instead of having a set group where you're swimming with just the athletes that are in that group, a middle distance group, a sprint group, a distance group, whatever that is, and those are the only people that you see on a daily basis. I wanted there to be a rotation of athletes where you are essentially getting an opportunity to swim with everybody on the team at some point throughout the week. The only athletes that might have not gotten the opportunity to be with everybody were those that were on the mile end, but they still were able to get a good mixture, which I was really happy about. And it just keeps things fresh throughout the week. You don't really get very stale. And so we progressed our work as we went through the week to kind of be a little bit faster on the ends, a little bit more of the work in the beginning part of the week. As we get into our competition season, it essentially mimics that, where the speed work gets done on the weekends when we compete. But we essentially identified the work that I felt like we needed to get done. Power work, long aerobic work. We needed some specific 200 stroke work, 100 stroke work, or whatever that looked like. And we placed them in different sections throughout the week. And then we assign groups, or we assign people to each item of work. So we might have had 4 groups going on a Monday afternoon, and everybody knew where they were on Monday afternoons. And then on Tuesday, okay, we're doing these 2 things of work, and I feel like this person needs this. And so they'd be in this group or that group. So when we look at the whole week, I can say, okay, this athlete is doing this on Monday, this on Tuesday, this, and piece together a week that I felt like that work would have been beneficial for the events that they're swimming. So everybody got speed work. Our milers were on towers doing 25s. I just felt like that was really important to building strength and just building a sense of speed, that maybe they might not feel otherwise. Our 200 stroke group got racks, and then they also got long aerobic work. So we were layering up all this work throughout the week. And then, so that was essentially our weekly microcycle. And then, we'll probably do things a little bit differently this year, but we evolved that and we rotated some of the emphasis at different parts of the year. I wouldn't say consistently, but more or less, we kind of broke that up by when we had meets. So we might have had like a 3-week, macro cycle, and then maybe a 2-week macro cycle, and then back to 3 or 4, depending on what time of the year we were. But I felt like that worked really, really well because everybody had their favorite day. Like, I get this work on this day, and I get to swim with this person on this day. So it made it easier to go through the week. It's Tuesday and our long free group is going a long free set, but they know the very next morning they're on towers. It's not like they're just continuously having to grind through a week. And that way you almost get the work done while having a lot of fun doing it, but it gets done in a way that you almost don't realize that you're getting it done. And at the end of the week, our volume counts we tracked, we're consistent with what I really wanted them to be for each individual athlete. And sometimes the athletes might not have even known it. It's because of the way we broke it up, or they didn't feel like they had all that volume or all that fatigue at the end of the week. So I really appreciate how we did that. We are going to continue to evolve that. Can't say it'll be identical to what it was this past fall. Obviously, we have new athletes coming into the program, seniors graduating. So our team looks different. Our dynamic looks different. Some of the work might look different based on, what they've done as in their high school programs and what they need to get done here. But we'll always take a look at that. And that, to me, I think was a really effective way of continuing to not only build team culture, because you are getting the opportunity to be with different athletes and there's no segmentation. It's not like sprint group, middle distance group, because everybody at some point, is just getting the opportunity to train with each other.
You mentioned something there about putting distance swimmers on the towers. I started doing a lot more of that here. If for no other reason, I couldn't have the distance swimmers looking at me going, seriously, coach, they get to go play with fins and paddles and we're grinding out 800s or 900s or whatever here. But I think you're right. There is a power component. There is a speed component to be able to close those races. Looking ahead, I mean, obviously you talked about, you've done some reflection over the course of this past year, but looking ahead to what you're going forward with, are there some things with your coaching in the past at Alto, with Stanford and Pitt that you had, or not Pitt, I'm sorry, Notre Dame, that you had done there and you said, I'm going to bring this with me to BC, and then you got here and went, this isn't going to work? Or were there some things that I'm like, okay, I can't try this here at Notre Dame, but I can try this here at BC? What are some things that you've kind of evolved or changed since you started your coaching career? And I actually was there the first time you ever coached a college group, and because I let you have a spring practice, and I just stood out to the sidelines and like, well, I'm not coaching today. This is all his, because I knew this is what you wanted to do for a career. But what are some things that you think you have adapted or changed from your time at Alto all the way through now at BC?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with my club experience first. I worked with Joey Simontelli. He was the head coach of that program, still is. And at the time, he was a volunteer assistant for the Stanford women. And so there was a lot of correlation, I think, between some of the work they were doing as well as what we were doing with the national group, pretty much our high school group, 14 to 18. And we worked. The way we kind of put our focus was we want to be really good at the long course 400 freestyle and long course 400 AM. So, everything else kind of splintered away from there, short course and beyond. And it was really fun to see people really buy into that, as well as get that work and see the success that we had and develop athletes that were good at 4 strokes, and develop athletes that had a wide range of skill set and weren't, doing a whole lot of specific work on 1 or 2 events. Let them do that in college level, but give them a great base to be able to work from. And we had some really good success. We had some great athletes, some great swimmers, some athletes that went on to compete in college. And, it's still fun, because I think over the next 2 years, or these are the last 2 years, that athletes that I coached at that group are going to be swimming in college. And a couple of them actually are out here in Boston. So that's been a really enjoyable process of seeing them continue to carry their careers through college. But we worked. And some of that stuff is something that I laugh at every now and then. And some of that stuff is like, oh, I want to apply this and I want to do something like this where I'm here. When I got the opportunity to be the volunteer at Stanford, that would probably be the outlier. We had some psychotic distance swimmers there that took after Jeff Kostoff, who was the assistant there at the time, who just really wanted to ground and pound the yardage and, super high volume. True Sweetser was there. He did open water. We had Liam Egan, we had Grant Schultz, James Murphy, just some people that could really do some pretty good things in the 500 mile. And so that was pretty remarkable to be there and see the kind of work that went into that, to see them work as hard as they did and see some of the things that they can accomplish in practice. At Notre Dame, I didn't work specifically with the distance group, although we did have some very talented distance swimmers there. Aaron Bell and Mitch Dansky were the coaches for that subset of our program, and they did a great job there. But it wasn't like I could take a lot of that work and apply it to the middle distance or sprint groups that I got the opportunity to work with in Notre Dame. And even some of the distance swimmers here at BC, they're talented in their own right, but it's not work that I feel like is applicable to what they want to do at the end of the year, nor is it really something that I feel like even if they were more talented, would be necessary. And so it's kind of been a more refined approach going to Notre Dame, and then even more refined coming to BC, because you just continue to get more exposure, more experience with different athletes, and you continue to learn. And you continue to evolve. You don't need to give somebody a 5K for time, every week and just be like, oh, this is what it takes. There are different ways to approach that same method and that kind of work and achieve the same response from your body, and just do it differently. So that has been something that I've kind of taken to approach, and it worked really well for while we were at Stanford. I think we were fifth in the country, seventh in the country.
Mm-hmm.
2 years I was there, Pac-12 champions. We had a national champion while I was there too. So it certainly it worked for that group. And then you just got to be able to apply the work to the athletes you have in the water and find the most effective and efficient way to make them better. I would not say that we're a high volume program by any means here. I don't think that we're USRPT either. We're not putting in 15, 20 grand a week. We're certainly doing a little bit more. And we take the time to build up a good background. We take the time to do specific speed work. I don't really worry too much about making sure that we hit a volume count for most groups. We just naturally get there, and we continue to build out throughout a season. And then we, make decisions necessary as we come close to championship season when it comes to portioning that out. But it's not something where I'm like, oh, we got to hit X number every week. And I think some of the kids here would their eyes would go wide if they saw some of the things we did at Alto every now and then,
or anything that Jeff Kostoff throw at anybody. His distance workouts are legendary.
Yeah, no, Jeff can certainly he can dish it out, but he can dish it out because he did it back in the day.
Yeah, yes, he did. Absolutely. When you got to BC, took over as the head coach, obviously it's one thing about getting the income or the returning kids on board with what you want to do and your kind of vision for the program, but you've inherited a recruiting class that you didn't bring in. Your conversations have been limited to a few text messages or emails. What were some things that were on your mind about getting these kids up to speed with what your philosophy was going to be? Because obviously they were recruited with a different mindset, and the returners, they're going to be, okay, new guy, they know what to expect, but the incoming kids, they don't know anything about you other than you just came from Notre Dame. And so what were some of the challenges that you faced with that incoming group?
Yeah, I actually think that everybody was pretty much on the same playing field. Nobody really understood exactly how things were going to go. And everybody might have been a little bit apprehensive or nervous about the change, but still pretty excited and energized for the shift. And I didn't know the freshmen from the seniors when I walked on campus, in terms of the names and who they were. And so I feel like in that regard, at least from my perspective, I think everybody was pretty much kind of in the same spot. But I think it was also something we had a bunch of freshmen that not only were coming in the program as not maybe knowing everybody on the team and kind of being a little bit nervous about the whole college experience, but then also wanting to prove themselves to somebody who they hadn't spoken with before on the phone or been recruited by. So there might have been a little bit of that on their end, but I feel like even the seniors were trying to prove something. The juniors are trying to prove something. Sophomores were. So everybody was really, putting their best foot forward those first couple of weeks, and to continue throughout the year. But, this class will be a little bit different. This class will be something where it's still been kind of a blend of the old staff as well as our staff now that have recruited, and anybody that got an opportunity from Mike Stevens, who's now the head coach at Hawaii. He was the head coach here prior. We certainly gave them the opportunity to continue here at BC. It wasn't something we're going to take away from them. Some good kids, some good athletes. And so something that we were really pretty stuck on was continuing to give them the opportunity. And then we continue to grow and evolve the class with some people that we brought in to fill different gaps on our team. And so it's a blend of that. And even to that degree, a lot of them had already taken their full 5 visits, or they'd already taken an official visit here, so they couldn't take another one. I've met maybe one of them, in person. So I still have not met them in person. It's just been conversations on the phone. It's been Zooms, it's been FaceTimes. It has not been, this in-person relationship yet. So that'll be a little bit different too. And the first opportunity that I really have to meet people that are going to be a part of our program has been as we brought people in for recruiting trips, for the class of 2024, the recruiting class. And then this, June, once we start the class of 2025, will be the first time that I get to kind of build those relationships a little bit more prior to them coming on campus.
Looking forward, you've obviously got your very first recruiting class as a head coach coming in this fall, the class of 2023. What are some things that you're excited about for Boston College Swimming going forward?
Yeah, I think the overarching theme is just continuing to improve and continuing to be more and more competitive year in, year out. We have our internal goals of our school records. Those are always something that we chase. We have a very long history. This program has a long history, but the type of athletes that we're bringing into this program now, and it kind of started with Mike back in the day, a couple of years ago when he started off as the head coach here and then left. Now our staff's taking over, of just continuing to push the needle further and further and further and bring in better athletes, develop athletes more effectively and efficiently throughout the year. And that has just been a really enjoyable thing to be a part of. We have some pretty ambitious goals. I certainly will keep those, to ourselves at this point when it comes to just, what we want to accomplish on the board at the end of the year, time wise. It's not really something that we really think about what we want to do at ACCs. That to me is just that's an outcome. And if we have the year we want to have, things might look different, and that's great. And we'll celebrate that. But it's all about what we want to do day in and day out. We have a countdown pretty much on our workout every day. We're this many days out of ACCs. And it's not, we're expecting this outcome in 80 days or 100 days. It's you have 100 days left of the process to get to the outcome. And so my big goal is that everybody really buys into that, takes advantage of the opportunities they have on a daily basis to get better, to improve themselves, to improve the team. Always trying to make those around us better, be a better teammate. In the next 2 to 3 years, who knows what that looks like for our program overall. But I just want to see people getting better at the sport. Swimming is a tough sport. It's not easy. It's not easy to improve, every single year. You're not an age group swimmer dropping 20 seconds every time. So taking advantage of really recognizing the little wins, even if it's not something significant, as a coach, as a teammate, as an individual, you have to know this might not have been like my lifetime best, but I've made an improvement because last year I was way off. Okay, no, I really got really good this year and I dropped a ton of time. What's my ambition for next year? Like, okay, if I only drop a second, but I dropped 10 seconds before, am I be more disappointed, or I'm going to be continually happy that I'm progressing in the sport? And so that's kind of the mentality that we've cultured here. And as long as we're putting our best foot forward, putting our effort in, competing hard, working hard, I really think that this team is going to continue to grow and evolve. And it's always fun to hear, people congratulate us at the end of the season, and that's all well and good. There's a little bit of pity in there because of our situation in the ACC, but I certainly think on an intrinsic level, our athletes getting better at the biggest moments is the goal. And being our best in those big moments at our conference championship. Whenever it's an opportunity for us to swim fast, we take advantage of it. That's what I want our team to do year in, year out.
I think it's a big thing for athletes right now as they want to get some level of gratification and instantaneously. I've said it many a times to people I know, we're a microwave society, and having social media and getting likes. And I think we have to kind of temper expectations a lot for athletes that, okay, I dropped 5 seconds last year in the 500. I dropped 0.4 of a second this year. This year is a failure. Well, no.
Mm-hmm.
How did you swim? Okay, you dropped 5 seconds last year and you were in a consolation finals. This year you dropped a 10th, but you were in a championship final. How do you measure success? And I think that's something that we're having to teach our athletes a little bit differently, is to temper expectations and to focus on, okay, maybe I didn't go a lifetime best, but like you said, last year you were way off. This year you were closer. So I think that's critical in establishing a culture with your program, is making them understand that this is a sport that is based off of 100th of a second. We train an entire season for 100th. If you're a sprinter, that 100th could be a win or second place. It could be 8th or 9th. It could be 16th or 17th. It could be the difference between a school record or not. And I think educating athletes in a way that they understand that is critical for the overall success, not just in our sport, but in life. We're not all going to get the wins every year. Like the coaches in our athletic department, we're very fortunate here at Cumberlands, and you were a part of the first 3 of them. For the guys, we've won 8 championships out of 11. The women have won all 11 in a row. And they're like, must be nice to win every year. I go, no, it actually sucks. And from the standpoint of how do you measure your success? Okay, well, I look at it. How many PRs did we get? How many kids did we get into a final? So it's not about the trophy you put in the case. It's about what you're building that's around it. I think that is more important than anything else. And I hope more coaches adopt the philosophy that you have. I know your passion for the sport. I've known it since the day you stepped on this campus. When you were coming asking, before we even started classes, Coach, can I go down to the weight room? And I didn't even have a key for the weight room at that point. I think I told you something like, oh, they don't want anybody in there. Truth be told, I didn't have a key yet, Joe. I lied to you. I apologize for that. But I know your passion for the sport. I know the passion you've had everywhere you've been. And I know how much you're pouring yourself into Boston College. It's been awesome to watch your career, as with any athlete that I've had the pleasure of working with. But this one's the most fun for me because I can say, well, my athlete at Boston College. And they're like, ooh. And I'm like, Yeah, if you knew this kid, you knew he was going to be there no matter what. It wasn't because of me. Trust me on that one. So I do have one last segment. We're going to go through it. We call it C's on the Top. So I have 6 questions, this or that, and some of them are very specific to you as a person because I know who you are, and I of course want to put you on the spot a little bit. But first and foremost, sprinters or milers? Which one do you want to coach the most?
Milers.
Okay. Your sprinters are going to hear this. You know that, right? I just want you to understand that. Okay. Okay. For me, it was always the IMers, and you knew that. Like the sprinters, like I gave those to John. John, you're coaching sprinters. I'm going with them. All right. You are a native son of the great state of Michigan. So painful as a Buckeye to say that, but Lions or Red Wings?
Ooh, this is tough. You asked me this a year ago. This is an easy answer, but we've got a lot more faith and hype around Lions this year, and hopefully the hype does not go to their head. Keep it out of the building in Allen Park. Let's lock the doors and keep our heads level there as we go through the offseason. Big believer in Yzerman and the Yzer plan that they got going for rebuilding that program, and I'd love to see the Wings in the playoffs this time of the year, but I got to go with the Lions right now. They got the hot hand.
Nice. Stevie Y, great as a player and doing some good things with the Red Wings now. Jeans or sweats?
Sweats.
You've lived on both. East Coast or West Coast?
Ooh, yeah, this is going to be a little bit anti where I'm at right now, but West Coast.
Wow, and as a Midwestern boy, I thought you would have pushed and said Midwest. There you go.
Yeah. I did my time.
That's true. Very true. Better superpower, invisibility or flight?
Flight.
And finally, and you better be very careful on this answer, sir, Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Well, whatever's convenient. I'll say that.
So in Boston, Starbucks, or not Starbucks, it's Dunkin' because you can't throw a rock without hitting 3.
Right. I think there was a stat or something like, 600 Dunkin' Donuts in the greater Boston area. It's the most densely populated coffee shop area in the country. But when I was out in Stanford, I had coffee every day. I had Starbucks every day. It was easy. You order it on the app, you get there, you go to practice, you have your coffee. That cost me a lot of money. Looking back at the bank statements there, that gets a little tough to look at when you realize how much money you spent on coffee. So actually, when I got to Notre Dame, they had K-Cups in the staff lounge, hit the Keurig every single day. And then when I got here, same thing. So I've had the opportunity to kind of avoid going to get my own coffee. But when we travel, for meets, I think we always end up just deferring to Starbucks because it's everywhere. But when we're here, we host our own meets. We make sure we have like an 18-ounce thing ready for our coaches here that are Dunkin'. So we stay on brand out here, but pretty much everywhere else we're going Starbucks.
That's the one thing that's changed for me is I've never was a coffee drinker. To this day, still don't drink it. My wife, my son, everything. But my assistant coaches, since we had the Starbucks on campus, they have their own coffee shop now. But as the assistant coaches have turned over, some of them have brought their own Keurigs in. So now my office smells whatever, dark roast, whatever. So it's a little bizarre for me. I'm not the biggest fan of it. But, well, hey, Coach, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with us. It's been a pleasure to, like I said before, to watch you grow as a coach. I had the privilege of working with you as an athlete, and I'm excited for Boston College swimming. I was a Notre Dame fan while you were there, but now you've gone to the Catholic school that I really wanted to go to and not the one that my mother wanted me to go to. So I can't wait to see what you guys are going to do over the next couple of years. I know your passion. I know your ambition. I know your competitiveness. So I know when I start seeing BC start moving up those ACC rankings at the end of the season, I know that your heart's going to be poured into it. But I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, and I look forward to following BC swimming going down the road.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a great chat. Good to catch up. One of these days, I got to make my way down to Williamsburg. I know I haven't been a frequent visitor since I left, so got to put that on the books.
Yeah, I'd love to get you in front of the athletes and talk about your experiences here at UC and obviously your journey through the swimming world since then. So take care, Coach, and I really appreciate it.
All right, absolutely. Talk to you later.